Welcome to today's analysis. Today we're unpacking something that's absolutely fascinating and honestly universally relatable for anyone who's ever had to navigate the modern education system. We're diving into a highly satirical but oh so true breakdown of the hidden reality of students. Specifically, we're looking at the incredibly chaotic, often bizarre life cycle they have to endure right after high school. From the moment those final grades drop to the day they step foot onto a so-called college campus, the source material we're examining today exposes a journey that's just filled with glitches, bureaucracy, and some truly hilarious structural failures. So get ready because this is going to take you on a wild ride through an education system that sometimes feels like it was built entirely on a dare. Okay, let's dive into this step-by-step survival guide. We're going to hit the board result chaos, the admission battleground, the scholarship struggle, take a peek inside the scam college, and finally, look at the infrastructure nightmare. So, starting right off with part one, the board result chaos. This is really where the whole nightmare begins. Right, so this is that very first hurdle. You're sitting there waiting for your 12th grade board results, but instead of sweet relief, you just hit this massive emotional and technical wall. The source material hilariously points out that authorities announce these results with all this huge fanfare, but the exact minute students actually try to check them, bam, the websites crash instantly. Why? Well, because it genuinely feels like these official platforms were slapped together by amateurs who literally just learned how to print "Hello World" in their first coding class. So now you've got students sitting at home, completely panicking. You've got families wondering if the kids somehow hacked and broke the internet just to hide their grades. And of course, those friends calling to brag about their scores. It's instant, manufactured chaos before the journey has even really started. And man, while that website is crashing, the family pressure is just mounting. Listen to this quote from the source. "Leave your IAS prep. I couldn't drink alcohol due to your school fees." I mean, wow. It perfectly captures that immense, heavy guilt placed on students who are just abandoning these elite civil service streams to survive the current mess. You've got parents projecting years of their own sacrifices, right down to giving up their evening drinks, all banking on this one glitchy webpage to finally validate their investment. And then comes the public shaming. The expectation is that if you do well, you get your photo in the local newspaper as a topper, right? A super proud moment. But the absurd reality? These local newspapers print photos of absolutely everyone. The students who top the exams and the ones who completely failed. Can you even imagine the collective anxiety? You're either celebrated as the neighborhood genius or publicly outed to everyone as a failure, literally on the exact same page. Moving on to part two, the admission battleground, where students are fighting tooth and nail for a seat. Once those board results are finally in, students are just shoved into this completely overwhelming competition. 1.5 to 2 million. That is the staggering number of students competing for just a handful of coveted college seats. When you really anchor the problem with a number that massive, you instantly get why the stress levels are just off the charts. The source notes how students look around at this absolute sea of competitors and realize, mathematically speaking, most of them simply cannot win. Now, the irony here is incredibly stark. Students finally sit down for this hyper-competitive exam, and one of the very first questions they're asked is, what is the right to equality? It's deeply ironic, considering that right outside the exam hall, the student body is intensely divided. They're fiercely battling over demographic categories, reservations, and quotas just to get a foot in the door. The contrast between that textbook idealism of the exam questions and the cutthroat, divided reality of the whole admissions process is just so sharp. Which brings us to part three, the scholarship struggle. So the crucial point is, getting the money is somehow harder than getting the seat. Let's say you miraculously survive the exams and actually secure a seat. You're done, right? Well, not exactly. Securing financial aid is an even bigger hurdle. The source material highlights this with a fantastic bit of exaggeration. To get a scholarship, you practically need 10,000 documents. You're applying for financial aid, but you essentially need to take out a loan just to afford the literal paperwork required to prove you need financial aid in the first place. It perfectly sets up this nightmare loop of bureaucracy. And honestly, the logic of these administrators is truly something else. Get this. Step 1. A student submits an original, official document which happens to be printed in black and white. Step 2, the administrator rejects it, demanding a quote-unquote color photocopy. When the student tries to explain that a color photocopy of a black and white document will still just be black and white, the official completely refuses to listen. So step 3,
The students literally resort to rubbing a red crayon on the paper just to add some color so the officials will approve it. They actually demand a specific blood red hue. It's this hilarious, mind-numbing exposure of a system where following arbitrary rules matters infinitely more than basic common sense.
Next up is part 4. Let's take a look inside the scam college, which happens to be 100 kilometers from reality.
So all the paperwork is done, the fees are finally paid, and you arrive at the college itself. But it's not exactly a vibrant academic hub. It's suspiciously located out in the middle of agricultural fields, literally 100 kilometers away from any actual civilization. You walk up expecting this professional administration building with desks, computers, maybe some educational posters. But the reality? The college office is literally a local grocery store with a pull-down metal shutter. A guy rolls up the shutter, invites you inside past the snacks and the supplies, and asks which degree you'd like to buy today. And this brilliantly illustrates how they are essentially running an educational black market straight out of a corner shop.
Now, these colleges boldly boast a 100% placement rate. Sounds amazing, right? But the deceptive truth is that 100% of those jobs are just local gigs, where graduates sit in that exact same grocery store, tasked with brainwashing the next batch of unsuspecting students into enrolling. The college is essentially a self-sustaining loop. They're not sending graduates out into the real world. They're just hiring them locally to keep the entire scam running.
And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, the infrastructure nightmare. Let's look at the supposed facilities versus the actual reality. So, imagine what kind of campus amenities actually exist when the college is literally built on a scam budget. They heavily advertise this free bus facility as a premium perk, but in reality, it's a complete illusion. Because the campus is so far away and totally unregulated, the bus gets hijacked by students' parents who just use it for their own personal grocery errands in town. And it gets worse. The much-hyped campus canteen is nothing more than an empty hut where absolutely zero cooking happens. So the bus drivers, Abdul and Rafiq, end up driving the bus 100 kilometers back to the city just to buy samosas to bring back to the fake canteen. The one singular perk of the college is completely misused because literally nothing on campus actually functions.
But man, nothing highlights the complete lack of spatial planning quite like the campus washroom. This is comedic horror at its finest. Step 1. The washroom was hastily built directly over an open, flowing drain by just placing 4 stone slabs down. Step 2. It is so unbelievably congested that it can only fit exactly 4 people at a time. Step 3. Because it's so tight, it operates on a strict last-in, first-out logic. You literally have to wait for the person closest to the door to finish before anyone else can leave. And step 4, to top it all off, the door opens inwards. So every single time someone tries to enter, they end up hitting the people already inside who are just trying to use the facilities.
And if you thought it couldn't possibly get any worse, there's one final, hyper-specific detail that just perfectly captures the total lack of basic care in this college's construction. The single-blade exhaust fan in this tiny washroom, yeah, it was installed completely backwards. So instead of venting the air out, it acts as a powerful fan blowing the stench of the open drain directly back inside onto the trapped students. It is an absolute masterpiece of terrible engineering. You know, we can laugh at the absurdity of it all, the crayon-colored documents, the grocery store administration, the backwards exhaust fans, but it all leads to this really provocative final thought. We chased degrees for years, right? Pouring our family's finances and our own sanity into this machine. But is this really the education system we deserve? This satirical timeline uncovers a very real hidden reality for so many students, a reality where actual learning completely takes a backseat to surviving broken websites, fighting impossible odds, and navigating corrupt, hollow institutions. It really leaves you wondering what the true cost of that piece of paper actually is. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for today's analysis. I really hope this gives you a completely new perspective the next time you hear someone talking about their college days.